A bone stock Glock 34 retails for $629. This makes the Glock 34 a popular choice for budget-minded competitive shooters. When compared against the SIG Legion for $1,400, or the CZ Shadow 2, which can cost somewhere between 2.5 to 3 times more the Glock 34, or worse, a 2011 Staccato, where we're talking as much as 5 times more expensive than the Glock 34. The Glock 34 by comparison seems like a pretty budget-friendly option. However, all of these pistols have better triggers and better features that make them attractive options. To elevate the Glock 34 to that level, one has to customize much about the pistol. Moreover, with budget options like Canik's TP9 SFX, which I've reviewed in depth in another video, retailing for only $549 and sometimes going on sale for even less, the Glock 34 begins to hold less and less appeal. I think all of these factors has contributed to seeing the Glock 34 being used less and less in local matches. However, I stand by the platform. I am contending that the Glock 34 isn't dead for competition use, and further, I will make the case that building the Glock 34 frame up is the best option for those looking to get into competitive pistol shooting on a budget. So the question becomes, can I build a Glock 34 on the cheap simply by buying the upgraded parts up front and working from a stripped frame? In this video, we'll show you how that is more than possible by shopping sales. Be on the lookout for deals leading into Black Friday this year. We'll start with the stripped frame. The Glock 34 uses the same exact frame as the Glock 17 with most of the same components, save for a few of the frame internals. The Glock 34 ships with the lighter trigger connector, dropping the trigger pull weight out of box to about 3.5 pounds. I got my Glock 17 stripped frame from US Patriot Armory for only $89.99. Another advantage of going with a stripped frame is that you can choose the exact internals that you want to put into the frame. For example, if you want an extended slide release or magazine release, you can just buy those options up front. I actually don't like to run any of these anymore because with my active grip style, the extended slide release kept locking the frame back accidentally. Also, the extended magazine release has a tendency to dig into your support hand, making it uncomfortable for shooting for long periods of time. So for me, the stock slide release and extended mag release ended up going back into my gun. You could complete the frame with a complete OEM parts kit for $80 from Midway USA, but it's a little cheaper if you end up going part by part and buying sales. Instead, I suggest buying the parts individually and then spraying for the Gen 5 Glock Performance trigger or the Timney Alpha Gen 3 trigger. The Gen 5 trigger is not out-of-box compatible with Gen 3 frames officially, but the main difference is the tiny lips on the underside of the Gen 5 ejector housing. So with a little Dremel work, you can get this to work in a Gen 3. I'll do a future video on getting the Glock Performance trigger to fit in Gen 3 frames later this month, so subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell notification to be notified when that video comes out. The Performance trigger is essentially all of the fire control group, eliminating most of the parts from the frame kit. You could simply buy the slide lock, slide release, slide lock spring, frame pins, magazine spring, and magazine release individually, which will help you save money versus buying the $80 kit and help offset the cost of the Performance trigger. Overall, with the Performance trigger, you'd be spending around $130, $140 versus spending $80, but you get the Performance trigger, which will help the Glock 34 remain competitive versus more expensive models. An OEM Glock slide completion kit will run you $130, which you may want to do. You could technically get by with the cheap off-brand Glock frame kits, as the frame parts aren't as mission critical, although you might have some issues with those kits over time, but don't skimp on the slide completion parts. In my experience, the striker-fired pins are always terrible and break on the cheaper kits. The extractors oftentimes don't work either and cause stovepipes or many other types of malfunctions. Go OEM on the slide parts or buy a kit from a reputable brand. In my case, because I was trying to go ultra budget, I went with Shadow Systems, as their parts kit was only $78. Considering most slide completion kits are around $50 for off-brands, you should just spend the extra money and go with Shadow Systems, or go ahead and get the OEM Glock. For the barrel, I went with a Lone Wolf Glock 34 threaded barrel. I got a blend model at a deal price of $55. The Lone Wolf barrel is about as good as OEM, so no complaints here. The fact that it's threaded can allow you to play around with compensators. I tried playing around with an Agency Arms 417, but it didn't run well on this setup unless I was shooting 147 grain ammunition. For now, I'm keeping the compensator off, and I'll review it in a separate video when I have more time to play around with it. For the slide, I got the Brownell's Glock 34 RMR cut slide on sale for $179.99. The slide is awesome. It has great finish. The RMR cut is cut with recoil lugs, just like the more expensive slides. This is ultimately better for keeping the red dot mounted securely to the pistol. To get the Glock 34 cut to an RMR footprint would cost an additional $110 on top of the $629 MSRP. So ultimately, the Brownell slide is a steal. Lastly, I purchased a $20 Magpul extended magwell for Glock frames to finish off the build. I topped it all off with the Bushnell RXM 300, which is an amazing competition red dot, and I'll be doing a video on this next month. Subscribe to the channel for more great content, including the Bushnell RXM 300 review. So ultimately, we have a pistol that comes in well under Glock's MSRP of $629. To do the equivalent upgrades on stock Glock, the pistol would cost over $1,000 when all is said and done, but by building from sale parts, our build costs less than half of that. We end up with a Glock 34 build that is RMR optics cut, has a threaded barrel, has a Glock performance trigger, quality internals, and an extended magwell. The money saved can easily go towards an optic and ammo, like the rock-solid Bushnell RXM 300, which again I'll review in the future. The main disadvantage of going down this route is that you will only be able to compete with this build in open divisions, meaning that you'll be competing against some of the fastest race guns out there. It's for this reason that I will typically compete with the Canik TP9 SFX in open and carry optics divisions, and will compete with this Glock 34 in open. There's still some additional modifications that I'd like to do to this pistol, including experimenting with compensating the pistol, as well as potentially even exploring adding frame weights. Right now, shooting it with the TLR1 actually helps control recoil. I also plan to stipple the frame. When I have this build fully tuned exactly how I like it, I'll create another video. However, with all of that said, I'm really happy with this setup. It allows me to be competitive while competing with a pistol that still feels like my EDC pistol, as well as my home defense pistol. I hope this video inspires you to get into competitive shooting and to strongly consider building off the tried and true Glock platform. Glock isn't dead for competitive shooting.